Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for standing by. All participants are currently on a listen-only mode for the duration of today's webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to your host from the U.S. Census Bureau, Crystal. Crystal, you may begin.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Business Trends and Outlook Survey, High Frequency Economic Data. My name is Crystal Jimerson, and I'm a Data Dissemination Specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Exploring the Diversity of Census Bureau Data webinar series. This new series, created by the Census Academy team here at the Census Bureau, is meant to assist the novice to intermediate data user. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data, tools, and resources. If you wish to follow along, take a moment now to open an additional browser. You can register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speakers, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome written questions during the webinar. Please submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you've found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your question. We suggest you keep the chat panel open as we provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind you won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out links and other resources related to the presentation. My colleagues, Carol and Noelia, will be monitoring the Q&A panel. As time allows, we will answer your question directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your question with the presenters to respond to during the webinar. If we do not get to all of the questions with the response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials on the census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser such as Chrome or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I would like to introduce our speakers, Corey Bro and Alyssa Johnson. Thanks again for being here today. Alyssa, you may begin.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Appreciate being here today. Looking forward to taking everyone through this presentation on business trends and Outlook survey. And again, my name is Alyssa Johnson. I currently serve as a DDS, a data dissemination specialist here in the Chicago region. We have 6 regions across the country, and I am fortunate to be here in the Chicago region. I want to just mention real quickly, I've been with the Census Bureau since 2008. I'm going on 16 years now here at the Bureau, and it has been an exciting journey for me. I started out in 2010 working for the Chicago region as we set out to work on the 2010 decennial census. The decennial projects are really intense, and of course they only come around once every 10 years, so that was quite a ride for me. And then I joined the data dissemination team in 2011. There were just a handful of us working throughout the country, and in 2016 I decided to rejoin the 2020 decennial program here in Chicago again. where I was fortunate to be the regional deputy director overseeing the partnership program, the geography program, and recruiting. That sounds like a mouthful. It was a pretty intense ride from 2016 to 2020, but we made it through. And again, I cover the Chicago region. We'll go into what that looks like towards the end of the presentation. But again, welcome this afternoon. And Corey, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Elisa. Hi, my name is Corey Bro, and I've been here at the Census Bureau since 2018. I joined my current team, which has the Business Trend and Outlook Survey, which we're going to hear a whole lot about in a few minutes, last year in 2023. Before that, I bounced around with a couple other programs here in the Economic Indicators Division, and yeah, really excited to talk to everybody today. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Corey. We want to take a look at the agenda this afternoon. I just want to give a really quick rundown in terms of what the presentation will look like. We'll first provide a recap of our predecessor survey, the COVID-era Small Business Pulse Survey, before discussing the content, the methodology, and the data collection strategy of the Business Trend and Outlook Survey. You will hear us reference the survey as BTOS. And so I just want everyone to make note of that. And then last, we'll highlight some of the recent BTO data, including from the AI supplement, which I think people are really excited about that we recently released here at the Census Bureau in April of this year. But if you can just give me a quick moment, I'd like to just do a short overview before Corey digs into the presentation so that we can all fully understand the scope of the Business Trends and Outlook Survey. When I first was introduced to this survey, it really triggered a lot of insight for me in terms of how some of our local governments actually receive data from the Census Bureau. The BTOS provides insight into the state of the economy, providing timely data for key economic measures and business expectations about future conditions. So this is really important in terms of city planners, state planners, even on the federal level, things that we have to plan in terms of transportation, weather issues across the country. And by providing detailed geographic measures and business expectations about future conditions. And so again, BTOS provides local, state, and federal officials near real-time data for policy and subsector data. So that's pretty critical. And so in terms of making decisions, policy decisions, and decisions surrounding natural disasters and economic crisis, this data is near real time. So it's very key and very important. BTOS also provides insight into the recovery after certain events. And so again, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll provide a demo towards the end of the presentation because it is important. We recently had very severe weather patterns throughout the country. And so we want to take a little time to just kind of demonstrate some of the impact of those disasters that just recently happened. BTO, of course, we consider it as a lightweight survey. It only takes 9 to 10 minutes, unlike some of our surveys. And data collection occurs actually every 2 weeks, which is pretty phenomenal. And new data is released the same week collection finishes. So again, that's pretty significant and pretty important in terms of local governments being able to make policy decisions and recovering from certain disasters, and also indicators from retail trends. And of course, as I mentioned before, AI is very important. It's one of the trends that we're all watching across the country. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Corey so that he can dig into the presentation. So Corey, I will turn it back over to you.
You very much. Yeah, so as Elisa mentioned, I did want to provide a quick recap of our predecessor survey, the Small Business Pulse Survey. At the onset of the COVID pandemic in March of 2020, the American economy was undergoing unprecedented shocks and changes. And the Census Bureau leadership wanted to move quickly to conduct its first weekly email-only business survey, which of course was the Small Business Pulse Survey. We worked closely with a number of federal government agencies, namely the Small Business Administration, to quickly develop content to address their program needs. But we also wanted to measure key items that benchmark to other census programs. The Small Business Pulse Survey went from concept to publication in only 39 days. And at the time, due to time constraints and resources, the sample was limited to single unit businesses with less than 500 employees. As I mentioned, collection was done entirely via email, and we published data weekly at the time. And just a quick recap, here's some blog posts that were published as a result of the Small Business Pulse Survey on our own census website. And for 2 years, it measured the effect of changing business conditions during the COVID pandemic. And as I mentioned, it was designed to, and we think successfully complemented existing census data by providing that detailed and near real-time information. So going back to our timeline, starting in the summer of 2022, we wanted to capitalize on the success of the Small Business Pulse Survey, which led to the creation of what I'm here to talk about today, Business Trends and Outlook Survey. While designing this survey, we combined the lessons we learned with the Small Business Pulse Survey with stakeholder feedback and new leadership strategies to leverage the strengths and shore up some of its weaknesses. The goal is the same. We want to continue to produce near real-time data products and capture a true ongoing pulse of the economy. Small Business Pulse, like I mentioned, was conducted until July of 2022. That's when BTOS picked up, and we designed it to have an ongoing data collection and publication. So at the moment, we don't really have an end date. We want to keep this going as long as we can. And so because of the ongoing nature, we collect baseline economic data as well as any economic changes. And there's a few things on this timeline that I'll go into in a little bit more detail. And so, yeah, I just wanted to provide a little bit of an overview of our methodology. So our target population is all non-farm employer businesses in the US, DC, and Puerto Rico. Our sample comprises of approximately 1.2 million businesses. We do an annual sample refresh. Once in the sample, the businesses are asked to respond to the survey once every 12 weeks. So we split the 1.2 million business panel or sample up into 6 panels. During the first year, BTOS, just like the Small Business Pulse Survey, was a single unit only survey. Beginning with the second BTOS sample last summer, we added multi-unit businesses, which we feel provides a more comprehensive picture of the US economy. Because we're a firm level survey, businesses that have units operating in more than one state or more than one sector or both are tabulated in a separate category. If you take a look at our published data, you'll see that listed as XX in those categories. Due to the nature of the survey questions and the rapid collection and release cycle that we operate under, BTOS response data is not currently subject to editing. Just a little bit of an overview of our data collection strategy. As I mentioned, multi-unit employer businesses were added for this sample. Generally, the way we collect our data is the first cycle is provided, we contact our businesses via mail and email, and future cycles, we only contact the businesses via email. We operate under ongoing 2-week data collection periods, and we end up with a unit response rate of about 16%. And if you just look at businesses that are contacted by email, it ends up closer to 30%. All collection is done through our online reporting tool, which is Centurion. And as I mentioned, cycles and panels, this is a little bit of an infographic showing how that works. So as I mentioned, the BTOS sample is split into 4 cycles, and each cycle is divided into 6 2-week panels. A given panel contains the same businesses across each cycle. So business sampled are asked to respond about every quarter or once every 12 weeks for a year. So if you look on this chart, panel 1 here for cycle 1 is the same businesses as cycle 2, panel 1, et cetera, et cetera. And as I mentioned, we do mail a letter during cycle 1 to contact a few additional businesses that we might not have emails for. And during cycle 2 this year, we we sent out an artificial intelligence supplement, which I'll get to in just a second. And so building on that, I wanted to talk about our content a little bit. So much like the Small Business Pulse survey, BTOS is a sentimental qualitative survey. Our core questions are designed to be complementary to existing key items in other economic surveys, just like the Small Business Pulse survey. Where possible, we've even tried to reuse Small Business Pulse survey questions. The questions in that survey were designed to be a little bit more pandemic focused, but we realized it could capture other events as well, such as winter storms and other natural disasters, as well as supply chain and other economic shocks that the economy might experience. From this, we learned to design BTOS to capture content in a more general way so that changes can be attributed to a broader category of events. Some questions in our core content have been added in an exploratory manner, and we intend to reevaluate those after 1 year to assess whether or not it's feasible to continue fielding those questions. We asked most of our core concepts in 2 ways. We asked businesses about the last 2 weeks, and we asked businesses about the next 6 months. Beginning in 2023 and published at the beginning of this year, we included the supplemental questions that I mentioned earlier, and these are intended to explore topics that are currently trending in the news or are of relevant policy interests. And I'll go into more detail as the results of our first supplement, which was focused on artificial intelligence, in just a little bit. Looking a little closer at the core content, like I mentioned, we try to use Small Business Pulse survey content wherever possible. One of the key differences is we did expand to include future projections for many concepts, and we are always working with our external stakeholders to help prioritize our content. If you take a look at the table on the right, these are the concepts on our current questionnaire. Legacy Small Business Pulse survey concepts are highlighted in blue, and then anything that's in bold, we ask about the future. And then lastly, anything in red were added as part of our second sample. So they're new with the newest version of the Business Trends and Outlook survey. A little bit of an overview of the data products we produce. Every 2 weeks on Thursdays, which includes this coming Thursday, we release a number of data products. All of our data are tabulated by national average, state, 2- and 3-digit NAICS sectors, and employment size. We also tabulate data for the top 25 metropolitan statistical areas, as well as one multidimensional sector by employment size data set. Select BTOS questions are tabulated as indexes to provide key performance indicators for certain topics. These are presented on a scale of 0 to 100, and I'll go into those a little bit more on the next slide. And we also make our data products available as interactive visualizations, which we're going to see a live demonstration of in just a little bit. We produce data as Excel tables and as APIs, all every 2 weeks. Like I mentioned, we produce a set of indexes. So I did want to provide a little bit of insight onto the methodology of these indexes. Effectively, they are just weighted averages. Values closer to 100 on any given index represent a larger share of businesses reporting excellent or increased as their responses. Values closer to 50 represent a larger number reporting no change or average, and values closer to 0 mean more businesses report decreased or poor. The index questions allow data users to quickly interpret the whole of the responses to these questions, and they also facilitate tracking changes in aspects of business performance over time. And in the next couple slides, I wanted to highlight a few of our BTOS questions that have direct comparisons to Small Business Pulse survey questions. I do want to provide a point of caution. Some of these questions were carried over, but the samples were not quite the same. So the exact percentages are not directly comparable. The trends are valid, but the specific percentages are not. Small Business Pulse survey and BTOS have been able to track the impact of inflation on businesses since 2022. Throughout the early months of 2022, as you can see in the graph on the left, a majority of businesses reporting that they were experiencing price increases. And that trend continued into the beginning of the first BTOS sample. So as you can see, as you move to the graph on the right, the question changed just a little bit in terms of the response options that we gave businesses. But if you follow the dark red line, you could see that by spring of 2023, the majority of businesses began to report report that input prices remained unchanged rather than increased in the past 2 weeks. And that trend continued into the latest BITOS sample. This question, sorry, I already mentioned that. Next, we have our supply chain question. We asked businesses if they had experienced any issues related to delays in the supply chain. So this was, as you can see, a fairly long set of responses. And the responses to this question illuminated a clear uptick in the pandemic era supply chain issues. So you can see the yellow line representing none of the above decline throughout 2021 and into 2022. And then as we moved into, again, from Small Business Pulse survey to the Business Trends and Outlook survey, we see that none of the above began to rise back up as supply chain issues eased throughout the economy. And again, owing to our data collection strategies and our the high frequency nature of our survey, we were able to track these issues in close to real time as conditions evolved throughout the economy. And then just a couple other things before we move forward into the artificial intelligence supplement. I mentioned trend indexes, and so these are the full set of index questions that we publish as part of the BITOS. And I wanted to provide a graph showing the trends in the indexes over time. And so the horizontal dotted line represents a value of 50 on all graphs, so that would be more businesses are reporting average as the response. And you can see clear seasonal patterns in some of our categories, so employees and hours, as well as to a lesser extent demand and revenues. And then you can also see that current and future performance indexes, that's the top left, has remained fairly steady and modestly above average throughout the entirety of the BITOS survey. Output and input price indexes have both trended towards a value of 50, again, talking about inflation. So this means more and more businesses are reporting to us that there's been no change in their output or their input prices, though both measures have started to plateau since the start of 2024. Both future-looking price indexes have remained higher than their current-looking counterparts. That's the red line. And then one other thing to highlight, the future indexes for hours, employees, and demand have all remained below average, while their current looking counterparts have all remained above average. Two questions that we added in the fall of 2023 pertain to the impact of interest rates and the impact of extreme weather. On the left, got a trend line of one of the specific responses to interest rates. So we ask businesses a number of potential impacts that interest rates may have had. And we've chosen to highlight one here across a few sectors as well as the national average. And so we can see that a sizable share of businesses nationally, which is the gray line, which is at times have been over 30%, have reported that interest rates have impacted their profitability. Though that share has been modestly declining over the last 9 months. Certain sectors have been more sensitive to the impact of interest rates on their profitability. As you can see here, construction, retail, trade, and real estate have all been impacted more than the national average. On the map on the right highlights our extreme weather question, and we picked one data collection period from mid to the end of January to take a look at. And this one asks businesses if they've experienced any monetary losses as a result of extreme weather in the last 6 months. And you can see the highly geographically varied responses to this. So Tennessee and Oregon had both recently experienced major winter storms or tornadoes. And so you can see that they report much higher than most states, including even some of the surrounding states. At this point in time, and we'll look at the trend line for these graphs as well in a few slides. And so before we move on to the live demo, I did want to finally bring up the artificial intelligence supplement that we released this spring. So from December of 2023 to February 2024, we fielded 13 additional questions about artificial intelligence use, along with the 2 core, which relate to current and future use questions that are on the BITOS kind of full-time as core content. The AI questions were intended to explore more detailed patterns of AI use amongst businesses, applications to their business functions, the impact of AI on worker tasks and equipment, as well as a few other issues. The data for these questions were pooled into a single one-time set of results intended to provide a snapshot into the topic rather than tracking the change in responses over time. Businesses who reported they did not use AI were asked about why they were not using AI, the impediments that they were experiencing to their use. This research was conducted in partnership with the Census Bureau's Center for Economic Studies. And we collaborated with them to release a working paper summarizing our findings and comparing the data to similar questions found on the census's annual business survey. That paper is available on our website, and I do encourage you to check it out if you want to dive even deeper into how this fits into the bigger data picture that the Census Bureau has published. And as we'll see, there are interactive visualizations summarizing all of the supplemental data and a similar suite of data products, including Excel files as the core data products. A couple quick highlights to that data. So this is our map of current AI use. As I mentioned, this is 6 collection periods pulled together to provide a kind of single snapshot. Over this period, the national average of AI use was around 5%. Colorado and DC reported the highest levels of AI use, 7.4 and 7.2%. Western states tended to report a little bit higher than the national average. And you can see the lowest AI using states were Mississippi, West Virginia, and Maine. This is the same question broken out by sector. Unsurprisingly, the information sector, as well as professional, scientific, and technical services, the educational sectors all reported the highest rates of AI usage, whereas transportation and warehousing, construction, and agriculture sectors all reported the lowest levels of AI use, both current and expected. Also of note that I found interesting is the finance and insurance sector, which reported only the 5th highest rate of current AI usage. But when you look at future AI usage or intended AI usage, they reported the 3rd highest rate. Lastly, we'll take a look at the types of AI technologies businesses are using or expect to use. One thing that I do want to note with the methodology of these graphs, all businesses were asked the current technologies question. That's the one on the left, which included a none option, which the majority of businesses reported. In order to provide 2 similar graphs, we excluded those nones from this calculation and then recalculated the totals to just look at the businesses that were using AI technologies. And then for the expected use question on the right, we employed a skip pattern. So only businesses that were reporting that they were planning on using AI in the next 6 months were asked this question. We found that across both questions, marketing automation, virtual agents, data analytics, and natural language processing and text analytics were all the most common responses. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Elisa to kind of guide us into the data demo that we'll be doing.
Thank you so much, Corey. So much great information. We really appreciate that. As you all can see, this is such a phenomenal tool that can be used to provide so much rich data. And of course, it's all access. It's, everybody has access to this data. Again, our local governments, our businesses at all levels have an opportunity to dive into this data for policy decisions, as I mentioned before, and of course, business development, which is very important. We want to take a minute now to kind of dive into the demo and look at a few trends that impact how we live, how we make changes, how some of those decisions are made on a day-to-day basis across the country. And of course, Corey and I took a look at some of the impacts that are happening across the country. And we mentioned weather is having a tremendous impact on businesses and neighborhoods, communities in terms of tornadoes and flooding. Florida just recently saw great flooding throughout the state of Florida, with lots of businesses being impacted, neighborhoods being impacted. And so in places like Texas and Oregon and Tennessee, we've seen a rash of tornadoes that have really disrupted and have destroyed a lot of communities across the country. And so we looked at some of these trends and came up with a few areas that we thought would be important to demo so that we can actually see how the survey is providing such rich information for us to use at all levels. As a data dissemination specialist, we get a lot of requests for training workshops so that local governments can understand how to access this data. And so Corey's going to do a quick walkthrough, but in terms of some of those areas that we thought would be very beneficial, of course, we mentioned weather, real estate, demand, index changes, interest rate fluctuations. We wanted to go over that somewhat. And in terms of retail, future performances, as well as current performances in the retail industry. And then, of course, AI. As Corey mentioned, this is a very popular topic right now in terms of how AI is impacting employees in terms of their tasks. And so these are very vital areas that we thought that would benefit everyone here today in terms of what the data looks like and how to access it. So Corey, I'll turn it back over to you for those demos.
Great. Yeah, so this is our BTOS data homepage. So if you navigate to, I think the link that's been provided in the chat, this is where you'll end up. And I'll start just by giving a quick overview of this first page. So these are all of our indexes, and you can see our kind of key performance indicators here at the top. And each one of these does have a trend line available. If you hover over the individual values, and we also break that out by sector and state and MSAs. And so once again, highlight over an area of interest, and you can see the specific values for that, and the drop down to allow you to change the specifics that you're looking for. But yeah, to jump in, so if you go to the next tab, which is the Explorer, you can see all of our indexes again, and all of our individual questions with each potential response available. And we break that out by all of our single dimension items. So state, sector, MSA, employer size. So we wanted to start by showing off a couple of the state values, and I wanted to start with Florida. So if you dive into there and wanted to look at, as Lisa mentioned, the impact of weather, you can see the trend line that shows up over the last 9 months from Florida, where, you know, thinking through the last hurricane season and as we move out, we've seen a steady decline in the number of businesses reporting that they were impacted by extreme weather in the last 6 months. And conversely, if we jump to a state like Oregon, which, if you remember from the graph, had a very, very strong set of responses in January, and you can see the impact of the storms that moved through in January of this year, and then this, again, the slow decline back to a lower level of yes responses. Ditto for Tennessee, which also showed up on that map. The trend isn't quite as strong, but you can see the same pattern. And lastly, another interesting one to point out is Texas, which saw a smaller bump last winter, and more recently, due to some storms that moved through this spring and early summer, we've seen an uptick in responses. So we're pretty curious as to how that develops. Obviously, we hope that no one is impacted by severe weather. So we hope that that does not continue to increase. If we wanted to move over to sector data, one that we highlighted a little bit in the presentation that has had some interesting trends is real estate. So if we wanted to look at one of our indexes, you can go here and select any of our index questions. So you can actually graph all of them on graph if you really want to make things crowded, or you can just pick one. And so this is our demand index for the real estate question. So again, this is a weighted average of all our responses. And over the last 9 months, you can see a modest but noticeable increase in the overall value on that. So more businesses have begun to report closer to average. And so you can actually, again, compare this with the specific response totals. So you can see that the blue increase line has been really the one that's kind of been increasing the last few months. And that is not the right one. Apologies. So again, this is the interest rate impact. And so the red line is the one that I highlighted during the presentation, but here you can see all 5 of the options that we present to respondents. And so the trends here has been pretty interesting to see not applicable begin, to increase over the last 9 months. When you think about the current interest rate environment that real estate especially is experiencing. Retail is another one that we've seen some interesting trends. So again, going to the indexes here, if you look at revenues, as I mentioned, we can see a pretty clear seasonal pattern with our revenues in the aftermath of the holiday season. There's usually a pretty big reduction. So again, a value of 28 more businesses are reporting that revenues are decreasing here, but we've moved back up. But overall, the value has been steady-ish, moving ever so slightly towards the middle as time has gone on. Another one is demand. So we asked businesses how their demand for goods and services has changed over the last 2 weeks. And again, you can see a pretty clear seasonal pattern with that kind of pivotal January of 2024, again, as businesses deal with the post-holiday changes. And now that we've moved into the summer, we can see that the value that increases associated with has stayed fairly consistent. Lastly, I wanted to move over. So all of our AI supplemental questions are located on this tab. And again, it functions in just about the same way as the previous one. You can find all of our AI questions broken out with all the same breakouts. I'm just going to stick to the national average for now. So here is the current use question that I highlighted on the map, and we can see how that breaks out. And one thing we did want to highlight, an interesting question that we asked was about employee task substitution. This asked if businesses were using AI to perform tasks that were previously done by employees. And this was only businesses that were using AI. And of businesses that were using AI, we see that about a quarter of them did use AI to substitute tasks that their employees were doing. And then of these businesses that said yes, we asked them about the intensity. And we found that the vast majority of them only used AI to substitute a small amount of their tasks, their employee tasks, compared to previously. I encourage everyone here to check out the full visualizations that we offer. As I mentioned, we produce a number of data products. So these are all of our Excel files. Here is the working paper that I mentioned. Our questionnaires are available. All of our methodology for our indexes, if you want to read some math equations. We do produce an API for those of you who are programmatically inclined to connect. And we provide some templates for how to access the data that way. And yeah, lots of great information about our data, our methodology, everything that I did or did not go into during my presentation. And you're welcome to take a look at it. I'm going to stop sharing for the moment so that I can see the slides again and move forward. And I believe we turn it back over to, I don't know if it's Elisa or Crystal.
It's me.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead.
It's okay. It's Elisa. Thank you so much, Corey. So much great information. And I wish that we could demo a few other data sets, but I know that we don't have enough time this afternoon to go into more detail. But this was certainly informative, and I hope that that everyone will walk away with more knowledge about what the Census Bureau provides in terms of different types of data. And Corey, I just want to thank you again for providing such great information. At this time, we want to, this concludes our presentation. But before we close out, I just want to talk a little bit about the Data Dissemination Program, which is the program that I work under as a Data Dissemination Specialist. Here's our information in terms of if you're interested in training or a webinar on the data that we provide across the Census Bureau, the data dissemination training, we have all sorts of data gems that we can provide. We have great courses that you can partake in. And of course, webinars like this, we encourage you all to visit us so that you can sign on or request a webinar. We can recreate this webinar that you've seen today. Just visit us at census.askdata@census.gov, and the phone number, of course, is listed here. And we look forward to hearing from you all. Again, I'm here in the Chicago region. And if you're interested in a data workshop, we have data dissemination specialists all across the country, including Puerto Rico. So we encourage you to reach out to us in terms of hosting a webinar or a training for your staff to learn how to access this type of data and more. Here in the Chicago region, again, I've been here for a number of years, and our region covers the states of Arkansas, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Missouri, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So we cover a lot of area, and so do our other DDSs. And so we look forward to hearing from you guys. Corey, if you can move on to the next slide for me, please. Again, here's Corey's information as well as my information. If you want to reach out to me for any workshops here in the Chicago region, I'd be happy to. But again, if you are located in the LA region, Philly, Denver, Dallas, Atlanta, we encourage you to reach out to our staff so that we can provide you the same type of presentation that we were fortunate to receive today from Corey. So Corey, I think there's one more slide. And then here's the QR code if you're interested in receiving our contact information. And so again, we hope that each and every one of you will walk away with a wealth of information today, and we look forward to taking any questions that you may have at this moment. So I will turn it over to the next presenter. So thank you so much.
Hi, this is Carol. I was just wondering, I've got a couple of questions in here, Corey or Elisa. One from our participant here today is, Corey, you showed a lot of national data. Is that data able to be broken down into state level, MSA, zip code, anything like that, or is it mostly national data?
Yeah, great question. So all of our core questions are available at the state level, as well as we publish the 25 largest MSAs. Unfortunately, we're not able to break it out to county or zip code level data as much as we'd like to. It's been a bit of a challenge with our data collection and processing to get to that level of granularity, but yeah, like I mentioned, state and MSA data is available for all of our questions, all of our indexes, as well as the supplemental data.
Okay, great, thank you. And a comment, the data vises on the website are great, but is there an easy way to download the data instead of going through the API, or is that the chosen platform for that release?
Yeah, another great question. So the API is available. We also do produce Excel files that are pretty nicely, cleanly formatted. They're definitely person readable as opposed to machine readable. So yeah, if you want to find any of the specific data beyond what's on the visualizations, we do make Excels available, and they're on the same page.
Very good. Thank you so much, Corey. Noelia, did you see other questions that might benefit the group?
I did not. The two that I had in queue, you asked them. The one question that I did see, is kind of interesting. Did you ask or will you ask in the future if use of AI resulted in reduction of the number of employees? I know that we probably don't have that right now, but I just thought it was good enough to bring up.
Yeah, that is a good question. We did not ask specifically about whether or not impacted the amount of employees that they had. Oh, actually, I apologize. I completely forgot. Yes, we did. Apologies to the question asker that I forgot one of my own questions. Yes, so if you are looking on our visualization on the AI supplement tab, one of the drop downs is the question is the impact of employment. And we asked decreased, increased, or no change. The vast majority of businesses reported that AI was not impacting their employment. And again, this was a skip pattern question, so it was only AI using businesses. And we found that of AI using businesses, about 95% of businesses had found that it had not impacted their employment. And then for the future, let me pull that one up. The pattern largely held the same. We actually found that the share of increase and decrease was about the same for the future question. So about 6 and change of percent of businesses reported each that they found that felt AI would increase their number of employees and decrease. And then the rest, the other 87% were part of the do not change, will not change. And again, that's available on our visualization. And if you have any other questions about it, please contact us and we're happy to chat about it a little more.
And that's pretty much all I got. Anything else, Carol?
I think that sums it up. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was very, very helpful.
You all, thank you everyone for attending. I don't know if Crystal, if you had anything else to say to wrap it up.
Yes, thank you. And any questions that were not responded to during the webinar will be posted on our census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. I will like to thank you again, Corey and Elisa, for your great presentation. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. We thank you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. We are very interested in hearing from you on how we are doing, so please take a moment to fill out the evaluation that will appear when you exit the webinar. And again, look out for the recording, the presentation, and related materials from this webinar on the Census Academy by visiting census.gov/academy. Please check out the Census Academy for additional training resources and to register for the upcoming webinars. That does bring us to a close, and we thank you again for joining us today. I hope you have a great afternoon.
You may disconnect at this time. Have a great day.